She was sold at 9 for 30 pieces of silver. The world called her cursed, until the moon called her chosen. The alpha who hunted her blood will kneel when he learns the truth. The slave girl they tossed away was the lost heir to his throne. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's video, please do subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below. It truly amazes me how far our community reaches around the world. All right, now let's begin. The chains around the girl's wrists were too tight for her thin bones, but no one cared. She was 9 years old, barefoot, her hair matted with dust and tears as the moon hung full above the wooden auction stage. The village of Varen had gathered in silence, the air thick with hunger and debt. Her uncle stood beside her, broad shoulders, shadowed face, silver greed gleaming in his eyes. 30 silver, he said, voice sharp like broken glass. The buyer, a tall man in a wolf pelt cloak, tossed the pouch that clinked when it hit the ground. The sound echoed like thunder in her chest. The crowd whispered, a fair price for a cursed child. She looked up once, trying to meet her uncle's eyes, but he turned away before she could speak. Please, Uncle Merrick, she whispered, her voice trembling. You said you'd never leave me. But the man didn't answer. He just spat on the floor and said, you were never mine to keep. That night, under the pale stare of the moon, the girl was led away in chains, sold for 30 pieces of silver. The journey through the forest felt endless. The man who bought her didn't speak much. His name was Dagon, a trader of slaves for the shadow markets. Every time the cart jolted, the chains bit into her skin. When they stopped to rest by a river, she saw something strange under her sleeve, a faint glow on her wrist, like a silver crescent slowly burning into her flesh. Dagon saw it too. His eyes widened for a second before he muttered, "Moon's curse," and covered it with the rag. She didn't know what it meant, only that it pulsed when the moonlight touched her. She asked once, quietly, "Am I dying?" He just laughed, a cruel sound that made the crows fly from the trees. "If you are, someone paid too little for you." She stared at the water, her reflection flickering between her face and a shadow of a wolf behind her. She didn't understand, not yet. But deep inside, something ancient was waking, something that remembered being feared, not owned. By dawn, they reached a black iron gate. Behind it rose the fortress of the Alpha Steward, a place known as the House of Whispers. It was said no slave ever left it alive. Dagon shoved her through the gates and the guards dragged her inside. The walls were lined with wolf pelts, skulls, and silver weapons. The air smelled of iron and ash. A tall woman with scarlet hair approached, Mistress Kale, the keeper of the Alpha servants. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. "What's your name, child?" she asked. The girl hesitated. Her uncle had told her once never to speak her real name. "Lyra," she lied. "Lyra," Kel repeated, tasting the name like poison. I belong to you now. Remember that." For months, Lyra scrubbed floors and fetched water for wolves who looked at her like prey. She never cried again. She learned to hide her fear, to swallow her words. But every full moon, the mark on her wrist glowed brighter. And sometimes, in her dreams, she heard voices whispering, "You are not theirs to own. You were born of the blood moon." One stormy night, the Alpha himself arrived at the fortress. His name was Kalen Draven, the most feared Alpha King of the Northern Packs. The entire house bowed as he entered, tall and cloaked in storm-black fur. Lyra hid behind the pillars, her heart hammering. He was searching for someone, an escaped slave rumored to carry royal blood. "Find her," he growled. "She carries the moon mark." Lyra froze. The mark on her wrist burned like fire. She covered it quickly, but Kalen's eyes, silver and sharp, found her. "You," he said. "Step forward." The guards pushed her into the open. Rain dripped from her hair, and the Alpha stepped closer. His nostrils flared as he inhaled her scent. For a brief, terrifying moment, he looked stunned, like something in her scent had struck a memory. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Lyra," she said again, trembling. But he frowned. "No, that's not it. There's something ancient in your blood." She didn't understand what he meant, but the moon above broke through the clouds and the silver light bathed her completely. The mark on her wrist flared so bright that the guards gasped. The Alpha's eyes widened. "Impossible," he whispered. "That mark belongs only to—" Before he could finish, the lightning split the sky and everything went black. When Lyra woke, the fortress was in chaos. The mark on her wrist was gone, but the air around her buzzed with power. She crawled out into the rain, past fallen guards and shattered glass. Distant howls echoed through the forest. She ran until her legs gave out, collapsing beneath an ancient willow. There, the voice from her dreams spoke again, clear and strong now. "You were sold for silver, child, but born for the crown." She didn't know whose voice it was, but it filled her with warmth she'd never felt before. She looked up at the moon and whispered, "If I'm meant for more than this, then let them all see what they threw away." Somewhere far behind her, the Alpha King stood in the rain, clutching the silver mark she had left glowing faintly on his hand. "The lost heir," he breathed, "the one we thought dead." And in that moment, their fates were sealed. Alpha and orphan, bound by blood older than either of them could remember. Long before the chains, before the silver, before the name Lyra was ever spoken, there was a cradle of white fur in the royal nursery of Lycora Castle. The child within it was no ordinary babe. Her skin shimmered faintly in moonlight, and on her tiny wrist burned a mark no one dared speak of. The crescent of Athelin, symbol of the lost wolf goddess. That night, the Alpha Queen held her daughter close, whispering lullabies of light and storm. But outside the castle, Betrayal was moving in silence. The Queen's own brother, Lord Merrick, watched the flames of envy devour his heart. If the prophecy was true, the child would inherit the moon's blessing, not his bloodline. So, when midnight struck, he set fire to the east wing and called it an accident. The Queen screamed, shattered the halls as smoke rose. Soldiers rushed in, but Merrick slipped away through the servants' corridor, the crying baby wrapped in a blanket of soot. By dawn, Lycora's royal nursery was ash. The kingdom mourned the lost princess, said she'd perished in the flames. Only Merrick knew the truth, and for 9 years, he carried it like a curse. Merrick raised the child, not out of love, but guilt. He told her she was an orphan found near the ruins, a burden he carried from pity. Each year, as she grew, she began to resemble the queen he betrayed. Silver eyes, dark hair, a presence that silenced rooms. The villagers whispered that she was cursed, for when the moon rose, wolves bowed without knowing why. Merrick heard those whispers and felt his crime tighten around his throat. He tried to break her spirit early, starved her of affection, beat her for disobedience, locked her in the cellar on full moons. But she never screamed. She would sit quietly, tracing the strange glow beneath her skin, whispering to the shadows that seemed to whisper back. "Who am I?" she asked one night. Merrick slammed the door, shouting, "No one." Yet when he left, he found his reflection trembling, because deep down, he knew he couldn't keep her hidden forever. Her power was growing, and the moon always comes for what is hers. While Merrick thought his conscience, the kingdom above him shifted. King Kaelin, then a young alpha barely in his 20s, had just risen to power. The council warned him of a prophecy. When the moon's blood returns, the throne will tremble. Kaelin dismissed it, but the words haunted him. Strange things began to happen in the north. Wolves howling at daylight, stars flickering red, the rivers freezing under warm skies. The balance is off, his seer told him. The lost heir is not dead. Kalen had never believed in destiny, but something about that prophecy lingered like smoke. He ordered scouts to search for any trace of the child, though most had long given up hope. If she lives, he told his men, I will find her. If she's cursed, I'll end her. His tone was cold, but the way his hand clenched told another story, one of fear. Because even then, he could feel it. Something ancient was waking, and it had her name written in the stars. The night before Merrick sold her, he sat alone by the fire, silver coins glittering in a pouch before him. His debts were high, his conscience heavier. The traders would arrive at dawn. The child slept nearby, curled in a blanket too thin for the cold. He watched her for a long time. There was no hate in his eyes anymore, just exhaustion. You should have died with her. But you didn't. You survived. He lifted the pouch, listening to the coins clink, and tried to convince himself it was mercy. At least they'll feed you. But when she opened her eyes and smiled faintly at him, the lie burned. She said softly, Uncle, will I ever see the moon from the hill again? He didn't answer. He just turned away as the traders' torches appeared down the road. The child rose and followed, barefoot, trusting. The first light of dawn caught her face, and for a heartbeat, he saw her mother again. The queen he'd killed. He almost called out to stop them. Almost. But guilt can make a man more coward than killer. And so he let her go. Far away in the royal temple, the high seer awoke with a gasp. Her glass bowls had cracked. Her moonstones bled silver. She fell to her knees as a vision burned across her sight. A girl in chains, walking beneath the crescent moon, the mark glowing like flame. It's begun. The moon's blood walks again. That same night, Kalen, the new Alpha King, dreamed of a voice calling his name from within a storm. Kalen! Find her before the blood moon rises or all will fall. He woke in sweat, the scent of smoke and silver lingering in his chamber. Somewhere deep in the slums below him, a girl opened her eyes to the same moon. She didn't know yet that her every breath was a threat to a kingdom, or that the Alpha who would one day claim her was already searching for her shadow. She just knew one thing. The world felt smaller every night, and the stars were watching her. Weeks passed since her sale, but Lyra never forgot the feel of that night, the clink of coins, the betrayal in her uncle's silence. In the House of Whispers, time blurred into chores, bruises, and sleepless nights. Yet, every full moon, the strange mark on her wrist shimmered again, faintly beneath the dirt. At first, she thought it was a trick of candlelight, but then it pulsed, alive, like it had a heartbeat of its own. One evening, while scrubbing the stone floors of the servants' hall, she accidentally cut her palm. The blood that dripped out wasn't red. It shimmered faintly silver before turning dark. Terrified, she covered it with rags, but Mistress Kale saw the flash. The woman froze, eyes narrowing. "Show me your hand," she ordered. Lyra hesitated. Kale grabbed her wrist, and the mark glowed through the cloth. The room fell silent. Kale's lips curved into something between fear and fascination. "So it's true," she whispered. "The moon's cursed child lives." That night, Lyra was locked in a cellar with no windows. But what scared her most wasn't Kale's reaction. It was that for the first time, the voice in her dreams sounded afraid. The cellar was cold and damp, filled with the smell of mold and old bones. Lyra huddled in a corner, her breath visible in the air. Somewhere above, she could hear wolves howling. The sound wasn't frightening. It was familiar, almost comforting. She closed her eyes and the voice came again. You must hide what you are. She whispered back, Who are you? The answer came in fragments, like echoes carried by wind. Your blood remembers. They'll come for you. Before she could ask more, a door creaked open. A young guard stepped in, holding a torch. You're not supposed to talk, he muttered, but his tone wasn't cruel. He was barely older than her, perhaps 15, with eyes too soft for this place. Why are you locked here? He asked quietly. I don't know, she said. They said I'm cursed. The boy hesitated, then set down the torch. Names have power here, he said. What's yours? She opened her mouth, but the voice inside her whispered, Not yet. Lyra, she said instead. He nodded. I'm Corin. If Kale finds out I talked to you, she'll have me skinned. But he still smiled. You shouldn't be here, Lyra. You look like someone the moon would protect. At dawn, the sound of hooves echoed through the courtyard. Lyra was dragged upstairs, blinking into the light. A group of strangers had arrived, men in silver armor with the mark of the royal crest. They were the Moon Guard, elite hunters sworn to serve the Alpha King. Mistress Kale greeted them with feigned charm. How may the House of Whispers serve the king? Their captain stepped forward, a scarred man with pale eyes. We search for a child bearing the crescent mark, a witch, perhaps, a danger to the realm. Kale's smile didn't falter. A myth, surely. You won't find that here. But Lyra felt the captain's gaze land on her as she carried buckets past them. His nostrils flared. Wolves could smell truth. You, come here. Kale intercepted quickly. Just a servant. Yet her tone was tight, too careful. The captain didn't press, but his hand brushed his sword. As the soldiers left, Kale turned to Lyra, her eyes blazing. You will get me killed, you little wretch. If they find out what you are, they'll burn us both. Lyra didn't understand what she meant, only that for the first time, Kale was afraid of her. That night, Corin slipped back into the cellar, face pale. They're coming back, he whispered. Kale sent word to sell you before they return. Lyra's heart raced. Sell me to who? To a traitor who deals with the dark pacts. If they take you north, you'll never be seen again. He reached into his cloak and handed her a small pendant shaped like a wolf's fang. This will help you hide your scent for a while. Run when the moon rises. Lyra stared at him, unsure whether to trust him, but the fear in his eyes was real. When the moon lifted over the horizon, she slipped out through the kitchen window, barefoot, running into the mist. Behind her, horns sounded. Kale had noticed. The forest swallowed her whole. Branches tore at her arms, roots scraped her feet, but she didn't stop. Somewhere behind her, she could hear wolves chasing. And then something strange happened. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breath steadied. Her eyes glowed faintly silver. The forest itself seemed to open for her path. She didn't know how, but her body remembered how to run like something wild and born for the night. When she finally collapsed by the riverbank, her reflection in the water wasn't entirely human anymore. Her eyes gleamed brighter, her skin shimmered faintly silver, and the mark on her wrist had spread, curling up her arm like liquid silver. The voice returned, steady this time. They will hunt you, but one will protect you, the one whose blood mirrors yours. She whispered, Who? Before the answer came, branches cracked behind her. She turned and saw a wolf, massive and silver-furred, watching her from across the river. Its eyes glowed like molten moonlight. It didn't attack. It simply stared, tilting its head, as if recognizing something long lost. Lyra reached out, trembling. "You're beautiful," she whispered. The wolf's ears flicked, and then, before she could blink, it turned and vanished into the trees. Only one silver hair remained on the grass, glowing faintly. She picked it up and felt warmth rush through her chest. Somewhere far away, in his palace, Alpha King Kalen jolted awake, clutching his heart. The same warmth burned in his veins. Two hearts, same pulse. One lost child, one haunted king. Neither knew yet. They were bound by blood. The forest was still except for the whisper of the river. Lyra knelt at its edge, clutching the silver hair she had found. It was warm in her hand, almost alive, pulsing faintly with her heartbeat. The wolf that had watched her was gone, but its scent lingered, clean, wild, laced with the chill of distant storms. The air itself felt different now. Every sound seemed sharper, every scent stronger. When she breathed, she could hear the rush of her own blood like waves. The mark along her arm glimmered softly beneath her skin. She cupped her hands into the river and splashed her face. The water shimmered like glass, showing not just her reflection, but flickers of something else. A silver crown, a burning castle, a man with eyes like hers shouting her name. She stumbled backwards, gasping. The vision faded, leaving ripples that glittered like moonlight. Her chest ached. "Who are you?" she whispered to the water. But only the forest answered. She wrapped the silver hair around her wrist, feeling the faint hum of power, and rose to her feet. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, long, low, and mournful. The sound didn't frighten her. It called her. Far across the kingdom, under the vaulted ceilings of the moonlit palace, Alpha King Kalen Draven could not sleep. He stood on his balcony, the cold air biting his skin, his silver eyes scanning the horizon. His advisors had noticed his unease these past weeks. The Moon Guard's captain had reported strange signs near the border, howls that shook the air, trees bending toward the moon, a girl's tracks found in the mist. Kalen told them to double patrols, but in truth, he already knew the reason for the unrest. Every night since the storm, he had felt something burning beneath his skin, a scent that haunted his dreams, soft, wild, innocent. When he closed his eyes, he saw her eyes, though he didn't know whose they were. His wolf stirred beneath the surface, restless. "Why can't you sleep?" he asked himself aloud. The answer came as a shiver down his spine. "Because she's near." He gripped the stone railing, heart pounding. He didn't know who she was, only that her scent carried the same power as the mark that had flared on his hand the night of the lightning strike. The same mark that once belonged to a child he'd been told died long ago. By dawn, fog rolled over the forest like a ghostly sea. Lyra wandered through it, clutching a branch for balance. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, and her legs trembled with exhaustion. Still, she followed the sound of running water and the faint whisper of the wolf's howl. The fog thickened until she could barely see her hands. "Please," she murmured, "don't leave me alone." A low growl answered, soft but close. She turned, and there he was again. The silver wolf stood in the mist, eyes gleaming like molten moons. This time, it didn't run. It stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Lyra froze as it came close enough for her to see the small scar on its muzzle, the faint glimmer of intelligence in its gaze. "You're not a normal wolf, are you?" she whispered. The wolf tilted its head, and for a moment she could have sworn it understood. Then it did something impossible. It lowered itself, bowing. Lyra reached out and touched its fur. It was warm, like sunlight trapped in silver. A surge of power rippled through her arm, lighting up her mark. Her vision blurred, and she saw flashes. Kalen's face, his hands covered in blood, the moon splitting the sky. Then everything went dark. When Lyra opened her eyes, she wasn't in the forest anymore. She stood in a grand hall of stone and light, moonlight pouring through shattered windows. The sound of battle echoed around her, wolves clashing, blades striking. In the center of the chaos stood a woman with silver hair, holding a baby.
Her heart froze. The woman's eyes were her own. "Protect her," the woman screamed as flames roared around them. "The moon's blood must survive." Then a man, Merrick, stepped out of the smoke, sword drawn, face twisted in guilt and fury. Lyra wanted to scream, but no sound came. The vision fractured into shards of light. She saw Kalen next, younger, kneeling beside a cradle, tears streaking his face. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I couldn't save you." Then the world shattered completely, and Lyra gasped awake on the forest floor, the silver wolf still beside her. Her mark burned brighter than ever. The wolf stepped closer, nudging her hand with its muzzle. For a moment, she saw something flicker in its eyes, human sorrow. It looked like Kalen's eyes, but before she could move, the wolf turned and sprinted into the woods, leaving her breathless and shaking beneath the rising sun. Lyra staggered to her feet, dazed, her pulse racing. The visions were too vivid to be dreams. She looked at her reflection in the water again, and this time she wasn't sure she was looking at herself. Her mark glowed like silver fire, impossible to hide. The forest seemed alive, whispering her name. Then came the sound that made her blood freeze. Horns, echoing from the east. The moon guard. They had found her scent. She turned and ran, barefoot and desperate, branches tearing at her skin. The pendant Corin had given her flared once, then dimmed. She could hear the howls of hunting wolves behind her, closer every second. Her breath hitched. She whispered to the wind, "Please, help me." Then from the shadows, the silver wolf returned, larger this time, its eyes blazing. It leapt between her and the hunters, its roar shaking the trees. Arrows flew, but the beast moved like lightning, silver fur streaking through the air. Lyra stumbled back, tears in her eyes. She didn't understand why it protected her, only that she felt safer near it than she ever had in her life. "Who are you?" she cried. The wolf turned to her, eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment she could have sworn it understood. Then it did something impossible. It lowered itself, bowing. "Who are you?" she cried. The wolf turned to her, eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment she could have sworn it understood. Then it did something impossible. It lowered itself, bowing. "Who are you?" "Run, daughter of the moon, they cannot have you."
The silver dawn broke across the palace spires, but Kalen Draven's chamber was drowned in shadow. He hadn't slept. His pulse thundered, his body burning with the same ache that haunted him since the storm. His wolf had begun to stir violently beneath his skin, clawing for control. The mark on his hand, an ancient crescent lined with flame, glowed whenever the moon touched it. He gritted his teeth and slammed his fist against the marble table, cracking it down the center. "What are you doing to me?" he growled, half to himself, half to the restless beast within. A guard burst through the door, but froze at the sight of his Alpha King, eyes glowing silver, chest heaving. Kalen's voice was deep and cold. "Leave me." The man fled. Kalen leaned against the balcony, staring at the fading stars. He could smell her again, soft, wild, familiar. The same scent from his dreams, from the night the lightning had carved the mark into his flesh. He didn't know her name, but every breath of the forest whispered it. It felt like something was calling him home, to a place he didn't remember ever leaving. Down in the castle archives, the oldest priestess of the Moon Court trembled as she unrolled a forbidden scroll. The Alpha's curse, it read in faded ink. Only kings who bore the moon's blood carried the mark. The curse bound them to one soul, their fated half. If either died, the other would lose control of their wolf and turn feral under the next full moon. The priestess's hands shook. He bears the mark again. She remembered the prophecy whispered the night Kalen's mother gave birth. When the moon bleeds silver, and the storm crieth her name, the lost child will return,
and the Alpha King will remember her. She clutched the scroll, fear tightening her chest. The lost child. She's alive. Before she could warn anyone, a shadow moved behind her. A gloved hand covered her mouth. Too late, priestess, a voice hissed. She turned just in time to see the crest of the rival clan, the Crimson Fang, etched into his armor. Then darkness swallowed her scream. In the forest, Lyra ran until her lungs burned. The moon guard's howls faded behind her, but she didn't stop. Her mark throbbed like fire beneath her skin, guiding her deeper into the mist. When she stumbled into a clearing, the silver wolf stood waiting, fur gleaming in the pale light. "You came back," she whispered, breathless. The wolf stepped closer, its eyes flickering with something more than animal instinct, something human. "You saved me. Why?" The air shimmered. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a man's outline where the wolf stood. A tall figure with silver hair and eyes that burned like moons. Then it was gone. The wolf nudged her forward, toward the mountains. "You want me to follow?" she asked. The wolf barked once, sharp, urgent, and began to run. Lyra chased after it, heart hammering. Every instinct told her this creature wasn't leading her to danger, but to answers. She didn't know that every step brought her closer to the palace and to the man whose Christ tied their fates together. That night, Kalen finally gave in to exhaustion. He fell into a restless sleep, and the dream took him again. Only clearer this time. He stood in a burning hall, the same one that haunted his nightmares. A woman screamed, holding a baby swaddled in silver cloth. Flames licked the walls. "Kalen, take her!" she cried. He ran toward her, reaching out, only for a shadowed man to strike her down. Kalen shouted, his voice breaking. The baby fell, but before it hit the ground, light burst from its mark, the same crescent now glowing on his hand. When the vision faded, he saw her again. The girl from his dreams, standing in a field of moonlight. Her eyes were the same blue-gray as the river after rain. She whispered, "You promised you'd find me." Kalen jolted awake, sweat dripping down his back. The mark on his hand blazed brighter than ever. His wolf roared inside him. "She's alive," it growled. "She's near." Kalen threw on his armor, grabbed his sword, and called to his captain, "Ready the horses, we ride east." The sun was setting when the silver wolf led Lyra to the foot of the Moonspire Cliffs, a place wrapped in legend and fear. There, the ground pulsed faintly, as though alive. "Why here?" she whispered. The wolf turned to her, eyes glowing brighter. The air shimmered again, and this time the wolf stepped forward and began to change. Bones cracked, fur dissolved into light, and in place stood a man. Barefoot, tall, eyes molten silver. His chest bore the same crescent mark as hers. Lyra froze, heart racing. "You?" The man smiled sadly. "I'm not him, but I was bound to protect you until he came." "Who?" she breathed. "The one you were born for. The Alpha King." Her heart stuttered. "Kalen?" The guardian nodded. "The curse has begun. When the moon bleeds, you must find him, or both your souls will break." Before she could ask another question, the guardian's body flickered, fading into a silver mist. "Wait!" she cried. But only the wind answered. In the distance, a horn echoed again, deeper this time. Kalen's army had reached the forest. The prophecy was moving, and the two souls bound by blood and curse were about to collide for the first time.
The wind over the Moonspire cliffs howled like a wounded beast. Clouds split apart, revealing a moon swollen and red, bleeding light across the forest canopy. Lyra stood on the edge of the cliff, hair whipped across her face, the mark on her wrist pulsing to the rhythm of her heart. Down below, torches moved through the trees, an army marching. The air stank of iron and fear. "They're here," she whispered. Her knees shook, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything crashing inside her. The Guardian's warning, the scent of wolves closing in, the pull in her chest dragging her towards someone she'd never met but somehow already knew. The first arrow hissed past her ear, splintering against the stone. Lyra spun and ran, barefoot over rock and root. She didn't notice the drop of her own blood that fell to the ground, until the earth answered. The cliff trembled, veins of silver racing through the soil as if the land itself recognized her. Far below, every wolf in Kalen's army stopped mid-step and lifted its head to the sky. The moon bled brighter. Kalen urged his black stallion through the mist, the army parting before him like shadow before fire. His eyes gleamed silver beneath his hood. His heartbeats matched the pounding of distant thunder. Each gust carried her scent, wild, rain-washed, and heartbreakingly familiar. "Find her," he ordered, voice rough, barely human. But when his men began to search forward, something inside him snapped. Not them. He reined his horse hard. "Alone," he rasped. The captain tried to protest, but one glance from the Alpha's glowing eyes silenced him. Kalen rode ahead, leaving the army behind, the forest swallowing him whole. Branches clawed at his cloak. Whispers taunted from the dark. The mark on his hand burned until he could smell his own skin searing. The wolf within howled, "She's here." Then, through the red haze of the moonlight, he saw her. A small figure running across the ridge, silver blood streaking her ankle, eyes bright with terror and defiance. Time stopped. Kalen slid from his horse, every nerve screaming, his curse, his dream, his salvation, alive. Lyra stumbled to a halt when the shadow stepped from the trees. Armor of dark steel, silver eyes like twin stars, the mark on his hand glowing in answer to hers. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The forest seemed to hold its breath. "Who are you?" she asked, voice trembling. "The question," he said softly, "is who are you?" His words rolled over her like thunder, her mark flared, the pain drove her to her knees. Kalen reached her instinctively, catching her before she hit the ground. The moment his skin touched hers, the air exploded in white light. Trees bent backward, wolves howled, and for an instant, they both saw flashes not of this night, but of another life. A baby crying in firelight, a boy swearing an oath to protect her, a silver crown falling into blood. Then the vision shattered, leaving only silence and the two of them gasping in the dust. Kalen's voice was hoarse. "It's you." Lyra shook her head, tears cutting through the dirt on her cheeks. "If it's true, why does it hurt so much?" He didn't answer. Somewhere behind them, the sound of marching grew louder. The Crimson Fang hunters broke through the trees first,
Their leader, a scarred warrior with eyes black as tar, lifted his crossbow toward Lyra. "The lost pup dies tonight," he snarled. Kalen moved before he could think. Claws burst through his fingers, his roar shaking the ground. The hunter never fired. Kalen's strike sent him flying into a tree trunk, dead before he hit the ground. But more poured in, dozens, and Lyra felt the mark on her wrist ignite again. "Stay back!" she cried. Silver light exploded from her palm, forming a shield that rippled like liquid moonlight. The soldier's arrows melted against it, hissing. Kalen stared in stunned disbelief. "You wield the moon's power," he whispered. "That's impossible." "Nothing about me has ever been possible," she shot back, voice breaking. Then just as suddenly as it appeared, the barrier faltered. The effort drained her. She collapsed. Kalen caught her again, pulling her close as the last of the attackers fled. The red moon dimmed, turning white once more. Blood dripped from his claws onto her skin, and the two marks pulsed together, syncing heartbeat for heartbeat. Dawn crept through the trees, painting the world in ghost blue light. Smoke drifted from the ruins of battle, the forest eerily still. Kalen sat beside the unconscious girl, his cloak wrapped around her shoulders. For the first time in years, his wolf was silent, watchful, waiting. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You've been running your whole life, but not anymore." A faint shimmer of light rippled across her mark, answering his promise. Behind him, the priestess apprentice emerged from the shadows, clutching the bloodstained scroll. "Your Majesty! She's the lost heir, the child of the last Moon Queen, your promised mate." Kalen froze. Every rumor, every prophecy, every nightmare fell into place. He looked down at Lyra, at the fragile girl who had survived chains, wolves, and betrayal. His voice was barely a breath. "Then, the curse was never meant to punish me. It was meant to bring her back." And as the first rays of sunlight touched them both, the mark on their skin fused into one. The moon no longer bled. It waited, because fate had only just begun to move. The palace of Draven was alive with whispers. Servants froze mid-step as the rumor bled through the corridors. The lost heir lives. By the time the news reached the Moon Court, the hall was already crowded. Generals in armor, nobles draped in furs, priestesses clutching their beads. The air buzzed like static. When Kalen entered, the noise died instantly. His cloak was torn, his hands stained with blood that wasn't his. "Where is she?" demanded Lady Meroth, his aunt and regent of the throne. "In my care," he replied coldly, "and alive." The council erupted in protests. "She's a threat! She's a myth! She's cursed!" Kalen's gaze silenced them. "She is the moon's chosen," he said, "and the rightful heir of our line." Meroth's painted smile didn't reach her eyes. "And what will the pack think when they learn their alpha intends to crown a girl sold as a slave?" The insult hung heavy in the air. Kalen stepped down from the dais, his shadow stretching across the marble floor. "They'll think," he said softly, "that their alpha fears no bloodline, not even his own." In a quiet chamber overlooking the east garden, Lyra awoke to the sound of bells. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Silk sheets, a cracking hearth, the scent of pine and lavender. The guardian's warning echoed in her mind. When the moon bleeds, you must find him. She had, and now she was trapped inside his castle. A servant bowed. "His Majesty asked that you rest." Lyra stared at her own reflection in the mirror, bruises fading, eyes still too wide. I need answers, she whispered. The door opened. Kalen entered, the light behind him throwing his outline into silver fire. You should be sleeping, he said. You should be explaining, she shot back. Their marks glowed faintly in unison. That mark, he began, voice low, is proof of your birthright. You are not just a survivor, Lyra. You are the daughter of the last Moon Queen and my fated half. The words hit her harder than any chain ever had. No, she whispered, backing away. I'm nobody. My uncle sold me for 30 silver. Kalen's eyes darkened. Then he sold a crown he didn't understand. Outside, the palace drums thundered, announcing a meeting of the full council. Kalen led Lyra through long corridors, lined with portraits, each ancestor's gaze heavy with judgment. They'll want proof, he murmured. They'll test you. And if I fail, then they'll kill you, he said simply. The doors to the council hall opened, revealing a long table carved with lunar symbols. Meroth stood at its head, flanked by nobles whose smiles were knives. So, this is the lost pup, she said. My name is Lyra. Meroth's eyes flicked to the mark glowing on Lyra's wrist. A clever trick of fate. Let's see if it bleeds royal. She produced a dagger carved from moonstone. Cut her, Kalen snarled. Touch her, and I'll... Then let her cut herself, Meroth purred. Lyra took the blade before Kalen could stop her. She sliced her palm, and as her blood hit the table, it shimmered, turning to liquid silver that flowed into the carved moon symbols, making them glow. The nobles gasped. The priestess whispered. The prophecy was true. But Meroth only smiled thinly. Then prophecy will decide her fate. The test had proven her lineage, but it had also unleashed the curse. As the silver blood sealed into the table, Kalen staggered, clutching his chest. The mark on his hand blazed so hot it smoked. Lyra rushed to him, eyes wide. What's happening? The bond, he choked out. It's binding. The court erupted in chaos. Some fell to their knees, others shouted for exile or death. Meroth watched with quiet satisfaction. There, she whispered to her advisor, the curse ties them. If she dies, he dies too. Let the people fear her. Kalen forced himself upright, growling low. Enough. His voice cracked the air like lightning. The torches flared, the shadows trembled. From this moment, anyone who raises a hand against her raises it against me. He turned to Lyra, the pain still burning behind his eyes. You're not alone anymore, he said softly. But she saw what he didn't see, the way the nobles exchanged glances, the silent plans forming in the corners of the hall. The blood had proven her royalty and painted a target on both their backs. That night, rain fell over Draven Castle. Lyra stood by the balcony watching lightning dance across the mountains. You were born to be queen, Kalen said behind her. She didn't turn. I was born to survive. Queens don't survive. They get sold. He stepped beside her, his reflection shimmering in the window. Then let's make survival a crown. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not cold. If I stay, your people will hate me. If you leave, the curse will kill us both. She met his eyes then, and the world fell away, just two souls bound by fate they didn't choose. A distant horn echoed through the valley. Kalen's gaze darkened. The Crimson Fang has crossed the border. He reached for his sword. Lyra stepped in his path. Let me fight with you. He hesitated, then nodded once. Then fight beside me, heir of the moon. Outside, thunder roared, not as a storm, but as warning. The prophecy's price had been paid in silver and blood. Now it would demand loyalty or death. The first horn split the night. It rolled through the mountains like thunder made of rage. Kalen was already on the battlements when the flames appeared on the horizon, dozens of fire lines snaking down the hills. The Crimson Fang had come. Rain hissed on stone, but it couldn't quench the red glow spreading across the valley. They move under cover of the storm, growled Captain Torin. Kalen's cloak whipped behind him. Then we make the storm ours. Below, the pack howled in answer, the sound shaking the clouds. He turned once toward the tower where Lyra stood, pale against the lightning, and the mark on his hand flared as if her heartbeat echoed inside him. Keep the gates sealed until my signal, he ordered. If they breach the walls, protect the heir with your life." But even as he spoke, he knew she wouldn't stay behind. The moon broke through the clouds, not white, but crimson, and the prophecy's second verse whispered through his mind. "When the moon bleeds twice, the lost shall fight to reclaim what was stolen." Lyra tightened the leather straps of her borrowed armor. It felt strange, heavy with history, smelling of iron and old battles. The sword she held was Kaelin's, forged from silver, tempered in silver fire. In the reflection of the blade, she saw not a frightened girl, but someone older, carved by pain and defiance. "Stay inside the keep," the guard begged. His Majesty ordered." "His Majesty forgets I don't take orders," she said, and pushed past him into the courtyard. Rain poured in sheets, lightning flashing on the wet stones. Wolves shifted all around her, half men, half beasts, eyes glowing in the dark. When the first wave of Crimson Fang soldiers crashed against the gate, Lyra raised her sword and felt the mark on her wrist ignite. The air trembled. She swung and silver fire erupted, slicing through armor as if through smoke. For a heartbeat, everyone froze, even the enemy. Then the pack roared, rallying behind her cry, "The lost heir fights!" Somewhere above, Kaelin saw the flare and knew she had chosen her side. The battle became chaos made flesh. Kaelin leapt from the wall, shifting midair, landing in the mud as a silver wolf, twice the size of a horse. He tore through enemy lines, his claws painting the rain red. Arrows clattered uselessly against his hide. But for every soldier he felled, more surged forward. The Crimson Fang fought like zealots, chanting their war god's name. He caught sight of their banner, black wolf skull on a scarlet, and a cold fury took him. The last time he'd seen that symbol, it had been carved into his mother's coffin. "Burn it," he growled to Torin. Lightning answered. Across the courtyard, Lyra fought back to back with two pack warriors, her silver fire cutting paths through the dark. When she stumbled, Kaelin's wolf roared and plowed toward her, scattering enemies like leaves. She met his eyes through the downpour, man and beast, king and heir, bound by the same light. In that instant, the pack found its rhythm again. The battle turned. But not everyone fought for them. Inside the palace, Lady Marath moved through the halls with quiet purpose, her crimson cloak trailing like spilled blood. She reached the war room and opened a chest hidden beneath the table. Inside lay a shard of obsidian, a relic older than the pack's. "If the moon's blood cannot be ruled, it will be extinguished." She pressed the shard to her palm. It drank her blood eagerly. Outside, Lyra gasped as pain lizzed through her mark, a black thread weaving into the silver light. Kaelin faltered too, the bond twisting like a knife. From the tower, a column of shadow rose, blotting out the moon. The Crimson Fang soldiers screamed as the darkness devoured them. But it didn't stop there. It crawled toward the castle, toward Lyra. "It's her," someone shouted. "She's cursed." The soldiers hesitated, their faith cracking. Lyra dropped to her knees, clutching her arm. "Kaelin," she whispered. He tore through the storm to reach her, catching her just as the shadow tried to swallow her whole. "Stay with me," he growled. "Fight it." Her voice was barely a breath. "It's not me, it's her." When dawn came, the valley smoked. The Crimson Fang were broken, their banners burned. But the victory tasted of ash. Half the pack lay dead, and the moon hung pale and cold, drained of color. In the throne hall, Kaelin faced Marath, the obsidian shard now cracked in her hand. "You brought the shadow into this world. You tried to kill her and doomed us all." She smiled through bloody lips. "I tried to keep our kind pure. You would throw the crown away for a slave girl." His answer was soft and final. "For my queen." One strike and silence. Lyra watched from the doorway, trembling, the silver mark fading back to light. "You killed your own blood," she whispered. "No," Kaelin said, turning toward her. I killed the curse she made. Outside, the first clean ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the ruins gold. He took her hand. You've seen the price of fate. Now we decide what to build from it. Lyra looked at the smoking horizon and nodded once. Then let's build something worth bleeding for.
The battlefield had fallen quiet. The air still smelled of rain and iron. Crows circled above the charred ruins of the valley, their wings catching faint streaks of dawn. From the battlements, Kaelin watched as smoke rose in spirals, the funeral pyres of wolves and men alike. He had stood through the night, armor still streaked with blood that was not all his own. The crown felt heavier now, invisible but suffocating. Torrin approached, his arm in a sling. The survivors are gathered at the lower citadel. They wait for your word. Kaelin didn't look at him. His eyes tracked the horizon where the storm had broken. They don't need a king's word, he said quietly. They need to see hope still breathes. His gaze shifted to the courtyard below, where Lyra stood amid the ashes, her hair tangled, her silver mark faintly glowing in the pale light. Even surrounded by ruin, she looked untouchable. And for the first time, Kaelin wondered if the prophecy hadn't crowned him, but her. Lyra's hands trembled as she pressed soil over the grave of a fallen guard, one of the few who had defended her, even when others doubted. She had learned his name only that morning. Every handful of earth felt like a confession. Around her, the wounded murmured prayers to the Moon Mother, but none dared meet her eyes. Some still whispered curses, others bless. The line between the two blurred like smoke. When Kaelin approached, his shadow fell across her, silver and silent. You should rest, he said softly. Queens don't rest, she replied, not looking up. Queens command, and I am neither. Kaelin crouched beside her, his voice low. Then what are you? She looked at him, eyes hollow but burning. The reminder of what your world did to mine. For a heartbeat, his hand almost touched hers. Almost. Then he drew back. If this world is broken, then rebuild it. Take what's yours. I don't want a crown, she whispered. You may not have a choice, he said, rising. The Pax will demand one. By nightfall, the remnants of the Moon Guard and the lesser Pax assembled in the Great Hall, the first council since the war began. The chamber still smelled faintly of blood and smoke, its stone walls lined with flickering torches. The leaders sat in a half-circle, scarred wolves, hardened alphas, each bearing wounds of loss. Kaelin stood before them, every movement controlled, a king made of iron. He declared, the Crimson Fang is broken, but their master still lives. The shadow came from within our own house, and that stain must be purged. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Then, from the shadows, Elder Varen spoke, his voice rough as gravel. You speak of stains, yet you shelter one. His eyes cut toward Lyra, standing by the doorway, wrapped in a gray cloak, the girl who brought fire and ruin. Kaelin's jaw tensed. She brought victory. She brought death, Varen hissed. The prophecy warned of the blooded heir, a child who would destroy the Moon Pax. The torches flickered violently as Lyra stepped forward. Or free them, she said. The light in her mark flared, scattering sparks of silver into the air. Choose which story you wish to believe. The council descended into chaos, voices clashing, claws scraping stone. Some demanded her exile, others called her the Moon's chosen. Kaelin raised his voice once and silence fell like a blade. Enough, he thundered. The blooded heir will not be banished. She saved you when I could not. He turned to Lyra. You wish to rebuild? Then start here. She froze, realizing the weight of what he offered.
As queen? She asked. As equal, he said, meeting her eyes. The council gasped. A human cannot sit beside the Wolf King, shouted Varen. She is no human, Kaelin answered. She carries the blood of the first pack, older than ours. The revelation rippled like shockwave. Lyra stared at him, stunned. How would you know that? Because, Kaelin said quietly, I saw it, the night you bled silver into my hands. The truth hung between them, fragile and infinite. She wanted to deny it, to run, but the mark on her arm pulsed once, steady and strong, as if answering an ancient call. At dawn, the citadel bells tolled. The smoke had cleared, leaving only ash and morning light. The surviving packs gathered before the steps of the great hall. Lyra walked beside Kaelin, the hood of her cloak drawn low. The wind carried the faint scent of burned wood and wet earth. Kaelin stopped halfway up the stairs and turned to her. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do, she whispered. If I walk away now, your people will never stop hunting mine. She pulled back the hood, revealing her face to the crowd. Gasps rippled through them. Fear, awe, disbelief. You call me cursed, she began, her voice steady. But I carry the blood of both worlds. You can keep fighting ghosts, or you can follow me into what comes next. The wind caught her hair, turning it to a silver flame in the sunrise. Then Kaelin knelt, before everyone, and pressed his fist to his heart. Then let there be no more kings, he said, only those who serve the light she carries. One by one, wolves knelt behind him, the sound of armor echoing like thunder. Lyra looked at the sea of bowed heads, her eyes wet with something between sorrow and strength. Then let the ashes remember, she said softly. The queen has risen. The citadel bells no longer rang for war. They rang for her. Yet, even as the sound echoed through the mountains, Lyra felt a hollowness in her chest that no victory could fill. The throne room was a wound stitched in silver and ash, its high windows reflecting the pale light of dawn. She sat not on a golden seat, but upon a carved stone relic, the ancestral throne of the first Alpha Queen. Its surface was cold, almost breathing beneath her fingers. Kaelin stood to her right, unreadable behind his wolf's eyes. They'll test you, he warned softly. Every hour, every breath. Lyra gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. Then let them. She turned her gaze upon the line of alphas kneeling below. The war had ended, but the hunger for power still simmered. One by one they swore allegiance, some with loyalty, others with calculation. Yet as the final oath was spoken, Lyra caught a scent in the air. Faint, metallic, and wrong. Silver smoke, where none should be. Her instincts prickled. The piece was already bleeding. That night, the great hall blazed with light and music. Banquets filled the long tables, laughter echoing off marble and steel. Lyra sat at the head, beside Kaelin, her dress simple but striking, deep forest green, threaded with silver vines that glowed faintly when the moonlight struck them. Servants poured crimson wine, and the air buzzed with the illusion of joy. Yet she felt it, that stillness beneath the noise, the whisper of eyes watching too long. You're not eating, Kaelin murmured. Neither are you, she replied. He smiled faintly. Old soldiers don't trust peace. Then it happened. A servant tripped, a goblet spilled, and for a heartbeat, Lyra caught the scent again. Silver dust. Her vision sharpened. Without thinking, she knocked the cup from Kaelin's hand. It shattered, spilling liquid that hissed against the floor like acid. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Someone tried to poison the king, she said, voice steady, eyes scanning the hall. And in the stunned quiet, she saw it,
a shadow slipping between the guards, leaving only the faintest echo of a growl. Not human, not wolf, something older. Later that night, Lyra moved through the darkened corridors of the keep, her bare feet silent on the cold stone. The silver mark on her arm pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat leading her somewhere. She followed it to the forgotten crypt beneath the citadel, a place of sealed doors and ancient murals. One depicted a queen crowned in shadows, her eyes bright with the same silver fire Lyra saw in her dreams. The shadow crown, she realized, the one the prophecy spoke of. "You shouldn't be here," came a voice. Kalen stepped from the shadows, his cloak wet with rain. "I could say the same," she answered. He studied the mural, his jaw tight. The last queen who bore that crown destroyed her own kingdom. Or was destroyed by it, Lyra countered. They stood in silence, listening to the echo of dripping water. "You think I'm becoming her?" she said quietly. "I think the same fire that can warm a world can also burn it down," Kalen replied. "And I think," she whispered, stepping closer, "that fear of fire is what keeps us in the dark." By morning, Kalen's spies returned with news that shattered what peace remained. The servant who carried the poisoned cup was found dead, his throat torn out, but not by wolves. The wound was too clean, too deliberate. Torn placed a bloody token on the table, a coin marked with the serpent's fang. Kalen's expression turned cold. "Crimson Fang survivors," he muttered. "They've infiltrated the court." Lyra frowned. "Or someone here shelters them." Her gaze moved to Elder Varen, who stood too still, too quiet. "You've always hated what I am," she said softly. "Perhaps because you know what it means for your kind." Varen's eyes flashed. "Careful, girl. You wear a crown of fire built on bones." "And you," Kalen growled, "forget to whom you speak." He slammed his hand on the table, cracking the wood. "Find the traitors, every last one." But as Lyra turned to leave, a shadow crossed her vision, faint yet familiar. The silver wolf. It stood at the edge of the hall, watching. Then it vanished into the dark. She shivered. The prophecy was moving again. That night she dreamed of moonlight drowning in darkness, of wolves bowing to a throne made of bone, of a voice whispering her name, not as a plea, but as a command. "Lyra of ash and blood, take your place." When she awoke, her hands were burning with silver light. The mark had changed, now forming a faint crown across her wrist. The shadow crown. She rose, trembling, as Kalen entered, drawn by the glow. "Lyra," he breathed, "what have you done?" "I didn't choose it," she said, her voice breaking. "It chose me." The light flared once, spilling across the walls in symbols neither of them understood, the language of the first wolves. Kalen reached for her hand, his touch steady, despite the power that crackled around her. "Then whatever it means," he said quietly, "we face it together." But outside, unseen in the night, Elder Varen watched from the shadows, a serpent's fang glinting in his palm. "Together," he whispered mockingly, "until the moon itself turns." The storm broke before dawn. Thunder rolled across the valley like the growl of something ancient awaking. Lyra stood on the balcony of the moon citadel, watching lightning split the sky in veins of white fire. The mark on her arm burned brighter with every strike. Something beneath the mountain was calling her name, deep, low, and terrible. Behind her, Kalen fastened his armor, the air heavy with tension. "The scouts haven't returned," he said grimly. "Torin says the lower mines have collapsed, and the earth reeks of old blood." Lyra turned, her eyes rimmed with silver light. "It's not the mines," she whispered. "It's the serpent waking." Kalen froze. "You mean the creature the prophecy bound beneath the first queen's throne," she said.
the one that feeds on wolf blood and silver. The sound of distant howling split the wind, not pain, but madness. Kalen grabbed his sword. "Then we move now," he said. But Lyra's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where crimson sparks glowed through the rain. "No," she murmured. "We're already too late." The citadel erupted in chaos. Guards rushed through corridors slick with rain and smoke. Lyra ran beside Kalen, her heartbeat sinking with the drums of war outside. At the grand doors, they found Torin, bloodied, barely standing. "It's Varen," he gasped. He opened the lower vaults. "He's not alone." His words dissolved into a wet cough, silver blood staining his lips. Kalen caught him as he fell. "Hold on, soldier." Torin's eyes met Lyra's. "The serpent, he's feeding it, with wolves." Lyra's stomach turned cold. The ancient creature needed living blood to awaken. Kalen lowered Torin's body gently, rage flickering through his eyes. "He was like a brother to me," he whispered. Lyra touched his shoulder. "Then let's make his death mean something." Together they pushed into the heart of the citadel. Every torch flickered green now, unnatural fire. Shadows moved along the walls like liquid, whispering in voices not their own. "Lyra," Kalen said softly, "if we fail, then we burn," she said, drawing her dagger, "but we burn together." They found Varen in the undercrypt, where the tombs of the Moon Kings slept. The air shimmered with heat and silver dust. In the center of the chamber lay a circle of carved runes, pulsing faintly like the veins of the earth itself. Varen stood at its heart, his eyes black, his veins crawling with serpent scales. "You should have left her to rot in the mud," he hissed as they entered. "The blooded heir was never meant to rule. She was meant to bleed." Lyra stepped forward, her voice cutting like glass. "You betrayed your own kind." "I fulfilled the prophecy," Varen snarled. "The serpent awakens, and through its blood we will be reborn. Wolves no more, gods eternal." He raised his hand and the ground split open. A roar shook the tomb, dust raining from the ceiling. Kalen lunged, his blade catching fire in the green glow. Sparks and blood filled the air. Lyra rushed to the runes, pressing her hands against the stone. The mark on her wrist burned, fighting the call of the beast below. "He's feeding on your bloodline," Kalen shouted. "You have to stop it." "I'm trying," she screamed, as the floor cracked open beneath her feet. From the depths came the sound of scales scraping stone, slow, immense, unstoppable. The serpent's eyes flared like molten silver as it rose, its body made of shadow and bone. Every beat of its heart shook the crypt. Varen threw back his head and laughed, arms outstretched. "Behold your god!" But before he could finish, the beast turned and devoured him. A single scream, then silence. Lyra staggered back, her palms glowing. "It's bound to the crown," she gasped. "It obeys whoever wears it." The crown, the shadow crown, pulsed on her wrist. The serpent's gaze locked onto her. Kalen grabbed her arm. "Lyra, you have to command it." "I can't," she cried. "It's too strong." "Then let me share it." He pressed his palm over hers, their blood mingling. The serpent froze, eyes flickering between them, two halves of the same power. Together, they spoke the ancient words carved onto the stone. Blood to blood, moon to moon, light devours shadow. The serpent screamed, a sound like the world breaking, then folded into light, collapsing into the crown. The mark on Lyra's arm dimmed to ash. Silence. Only their breathing remained. When the smoke cleared, the crypt was ruined, tombs shattered, runes scorched. Kalen leaned against the pillar, his skin pale, sweat cold on his brow. Lyra knelt beside him. "Kalen," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Still alive, for now." "You gave it your blood," she said, realizing the cost. "You shared the bond." "You didn't think I'd let you face a monster alone," he murmured. She laughed softly, tears streaking her dirt-stained cheeks. Then his hand brushed hers, weak, trembling. "Lyra," he said, "if I turn, if the serpent's blood takes me, it won't, she said fiercely. I won't let it. But when she looked into his eyes, for a split second, she saw it. A flash of silver green, serpentine and wild. The darkness wasn't gone. It had only changed hosts. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering, Then I'll fight it, even if I have to fight you. Above them, thunder rolled again, shaking the mountains. The serpent's blood was still alive, flowing now through Kaelin's veins, and far away, under the blackened moon, something began to stir once more.
The citadel slept under a wounded sky. Clouds hung low, bruised purple and silver, the air thick with the scent of rain that refused to fall. Lyra sat beside Kaelin's bed, her fingers tracing the ridges of his gauntlet. He had not woken since the serpent's fall. His chest rose and fell in slow, shallow rhythm, as if some unseen tide pulled him farther with every breath. The healers whispered that his body lived, but his spirit wandered. He's lost in the shadow realm, said the eldest of them, caught between wolf and serpent. Lyra dismissed them, but the truth sat heavy in her heart. She could feel the curse thrumming through him, cold, ancient, hungry. Every time she touched his skin, a flicker of green light moved beneath it, pulsing like veins of poison. She pressed her forehead to his hand. I won't lose you, she whispered. Not to them, not again. But as the words left her lips, a faint smile ghosted across Kaelin's face, one that did not belong to him. That night, she dreamed of him standing on a silver shore, his eyes glowing like molten glass. He smiled, but there was something hollow in it. You shouldn't be here, he said, voice distant, echoing as if through water. You're not Kaelin, she whispered. You're what's inside him. The figure laughed, low and smooth. You speak as though we are separate, but his blood is mine now, and mine his. You can't save one without feeding the other. Lyra clenched her fists. Then I'll starve you. Try, the serpent hissed, its voice now everywhere, crawling through the dark. Every light you kindle I will swallow. Every heartbeat you love I will twist. She lunged at him, but the dream shattered like glass, and she woke gasping, the room cold, her mark burning white hot. Kaelin sat upright in bed, eyes open, bright with the serpent's glow. Lyra, he said softly. His tone was wrong, too calm, too cold. Where is the crown? Her breath caught. You don't need it. It's sealed. His lips curved. Then I suppose I'll have to unseal it. By morning, the citadel guards whispered that their king walked again, but not as he once did. He moved through the halls like a shadow wrapped in flesh, his presence stirring unease in every wolf who crossed his path. The once warm gold of his eyes now shimmered with threads of silver green. Lyra watched him from afar, hidden behind a pillar as he spoke to the council. His voice carried authority, but none of the fires she had loved. We rebuild under one law, no more humans, no more weakness. Elder Varen was dead, yet his poison lived on, in Kaelin's words. Kaelin, she said when they were alone, you're scaring them. He turned to her, slow and deliberate. They need to fear again. Fear makes them loyal. Fear makes them monsters, she replied. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her jaw, tender, but his eyes were not his own. And what does love make them, Lyra? Weak. The mark on his wrist shimmered faintly. She slapped his hand away, tears stinging her eyes. Then I'll love you enough to make you weak again. Desperate, Lyra sought the last relic of the Moon Mother, the mirror of Althea, hidden deep beneath the chapel ruins. The mirror was not glass, but water suspended in silver light, its surface rippling with living memory. Show me how to save him, she whispered. The mirror shimmered, revealing images.
Kalen's soul entangled with the serpent's, its scales coiled around his heart. Only one way appeared before her, to call him back by name, through bond and blood, by surrendering her own light. "A soul for a soul," said the voice of the Moon Mother. "Will you pay it?" Lyra's reflection trembled. "If I don't, the world ends. If I do, I lose him anyway." "No," the voice replied gently. "You lose yourself, so he can remember who he was." Tears blurred her vision. "Then take me," she whispered. "Just let him remember the light." The mirror flared, burning her palms. When she looked again, her eyes glowed silver white. The bond was open, and the serpent stirred, sensing her call. That night, as stormlight poured through the shattered dome, Lyra stood before Kalen in the throne room. Rain streaked her face, the crown mark on her wrist blazing like a small sun. "Kalen," she said softly, "do you remember the forest? The first time you saw me?" He blinked once, confused, then hissed through his teeth, the serpent's voice layered beneath his own. "Don't do this." She took another step. "You said wolves don't kneel, but you did. For me." Hijida tightened. "Stop. You're still in there," she whispered, pressing her palm to his chest. "Come back to me." For a moment, nothing. Then a flicker of gold broke through the silver green in his eyes. "Lyra?" he breathed. She smiled, tears mingling with rain. "Yes, it's me." Then pain ripped through her. The serpent screamed through him, throwing her backward. She hit the floor hard, blood in her mouth. Kalen fell to his knees, trembling, fighting it. "Run," he growled, "while I can still tell you to." "No," she said weakly, dragging herself to him. "If the light's going to die, I'll die with it." Lightning exploded above, and for a brief, burning instant, Kalen screamed her name, and the serpent's hold shattered.
When Kalen opened his eyes, the world was drenched in silence. The storm had passed, yet the air still smelled of lightning and iron. He lay on the shattered marble floor, surrounded by streaks of silver light that slowly bled into gold. His chest ached with something deep and unfamiliar, not pain, but absence. Lyra was sprawled beside him, her hair fanned out like black silk soaked in moonlight. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingertips. "Lyra," he rasped, shaking her shoulder. She didn't stir. Around them, the citadel was a ruin of shadows and smoke. The serpent's influence burned away, but so was the last of her glow. The mark on her wrist had gone dark, its light spent. Panic clawed at his throat. "No, no, no, no," he muttered, pressing his forehead to hers. He could feel it, the bond, frayed but not broken. Something still linked them, faint as a dying ember. "Don't you dare leave me," he whispered. "Not after I found you again." When the healers came, they bowed low, afraid to meet his gaze. They called her sacrifice a miracle. Her soul had driven the serpent back into the void, sealing the breach between worlds. But miracles always came with blood. Lyra slept without waking, her breathing shallow, her skin cold as marble. "She's fading," said the moon priestess. "Her light burns on in him now. She gave it all." Kalen's hands tightened around the edge of her bed. "Then take it back," he growled. "Take it from me." The priestess lowered her head. "It cannot be reversed. A soul split in love is a bond that consumes both." He turned away, fury trembling beneath his skin. The serpent's voice was gone, but echoes lingered, whispers that spoke of hunger, of eternity, of how easy it would be to break the veil again if it meant saving her. "No, I won't damn her to save her." He knelt beside her, brushing his thumb over her cheek. "You saved me once. Now it's my turn to bring you back." That night,
he went to the chapel of the mirror, the same place she had gone before the storm. The mirror now lay cracked, its surface pulsing faintly with silver water. He drew a dagger and cut his palm, letting blood drip into the pool. "Show me where she is," he demanded. The mirror stirred. He saw her, standing on a white plain, barefoot, surrounded by silver fire. She was looking up, eyes wide, as if she could hear him. "Kaelin," she called faintly, her voice carried by the wind. He reached out instinctively, pressing his hand against the mirror's surface. The water flared, and suddenly he was there, between worlds, standing in the half-light. Lyra turned to him, her face pale, her hair glimmering like spun starlight. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "You gave up your light. I came to return it." She shook her head. "You can't. The bond's sealed." He stepped closer, the light between them trembling. "Then we'll unseal it together." He cupped her face, and for the first time since the curse began, the warmth between them didn't burn. It glowed. As their hands met, the plan around them ignited, two lights colliding, gold and silver merging into white fire. The serpent's shadow hissed at the edges of the realm, trying to reclaim what it had lost. "It's still here," Lyra gasped. "It's trying to take you back." Kaelin pulled her close. "Then it'll take us both." The shadow lunged, a serpent of smoke and memory. Kaelin drew his blade of moonsteel, forged from the same light she'd once wielded, and plunged it into the dark. The world shuddered. The serpent screamed, its voice cracking across time. But when it fell, it didn't vanish. It split, dissolving into two small sparks that drifted toward them, merging into their chests. Pain flared, brief, bright, then gone. They fell to their knees, breathing hard, their hands still intertwined. The mirror realm grew quiet. Then Lyra looked down and gasped. A faint pulse beat beneath her ribs, not her own. Kaelin's eyes widened as he touched her stomach. Two heartbeats echoed, one hers, one tiny and new, glowing with both their lights. "Lyra," he whispered, tears breaking through his composure. "It's us, both of us, inside you." When dawn finally rose over the citadel, Kaelin carried Lyra into the courtyard, both of them bathed in soft morning gold. The wolves bowed low, not in fear, but in awe. The curse had ended, the moon's light had returned, but Kaelin knew the peace was fragile. Every legend came with a price, yet unpaid. "You brought me back," she murmured, weak but smiling. "No," he said quietly, pressing his forehead to hers. "We brought each other back." Her hand found his chest, where a faint white flame now flickered beneath his skin, a shard of her light that refused to leave. "We're bound, always." He smiled faintly. "Then the gods will have to pry me from you themselves." Around them, the wolves howled, not in mourning, but in promise. The moon broke through the last of the clouds, washing the courtyard in silver fire. Lyra leaned into him, her voice soft as wind. "The serpent's gone. For now," Kaelin murmured, gazing at the horizon where stormlight still lingered. "But if it ever returns..." He looked down at her glowing wrist and the faint pulse within her. "It won't find us unprepared."
A full year had passed since the night the serpent died. The citadel, once a ruin of ash and whispers, now stood alive with music and moonlight. Silver banners fluttered from its towers, and the wolves of every pack knelt before their alpha king and his queen. Lyra walked among them slowly, her hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly, her dark hair bound with silver threads. Her eyes still carried the memory of that other world, the realm of mirrors where she had burned brighter than the stars. Kaelin stood beside her, a silent shadow in armor that gleamed with the mark of two moons. The wolves called them the twin flames, the saviors who had restored balance. But at night, when the torches dimmed and the world slept, Kyellen still woke in cold sweat, dreaming of serpents that whispered from the dark. Peace had come, but he knew peace was never meant to last. It began as a strange stillness. The forest fell silent, the rivers froze mid-song, and the wolves lifted their heads to the sky as crimson light spilled across the horizon. The blood moon, murmured the elders, a sign of reckoning. Lyra clutched her stomach, gasping as pain rippled through her. Kyellen was at her side instantly, his hands trembling. "It's too soon," he whispered. But the priestess shook her head. "No, my king. It is exactly when the prophecy said she would come." Lyra's knees buckled, and Kyellen caught her before she fell. Her skin glowed faintly, silver and red light weaving through her veins. "The child bears both fire and moonlight," the priestess said. "Two forces that should never have met. You must be strong, my queen. The world will bend when she takes her first breath." Lightning flashed, splitting the sky. The blood moon reached its peak, and in that moment, a single cry pierced the night. Soft, clear, and ancient. The cry of a newborn who carried both salvation and ruin in her lungs. They named her Era, meaning snow in the old tongue, for she was born amidst a storm of red snow that fell only once in an age. She had her mother's black hair and her father's silver eyes, but when she blinked, faint gold light shimmered beneath her lashes, the color of the fire that had destroyed the serpent. The healers bowed when she passed, afraid to touch her. Even as an infant, the air bent around her, rippling like heat. When she cried, torches flickered. When she laughed, flowers opened from stone. "She's not like us," Kyellen said one night, holding her close as she slept. "She's not meant to be." Lyra smiled faintly. "Neither were we." But she too could feel it, the strange hum in the child's blood, as if two souls sang within her. One was soft and pure, the other, ancient and waiting. The wolves adored her, calling her the moonling. Yet when the wind rose from the north, sometimes her cradle rocked by itself, and in the firelight, her silver eyes flashed red. The first time Lyra heard it, she thought it was a dream, a faint hiss, curling through the stillness of midnight. "Mine," it whispered. "She is mine." Lyra sat upright, every hair on her body standing on end. The nursery was bathed in silver light, the moon full and watchful. Era slept peacefully, tiny fingers curled around a crystal pendant that pulsed with faint heat, the same pendant Lyra had once worn into battle. Lyra stepped closer, heart pounding. The whisper came again, this time through the pendant itself. "The serpent never dies. It only waits to be born anew." The glass cracked in her hand, releasing a wisp of smoke that coiled toward the cradle. "No!" Lyra cried, slamming her hand down on the pendant, burning her palm as it shattered completely. Era stirred, her eyes opening, and for the briefest second, they glowed red like the blood moon. Then she giggled softly, reaching up toward her mother's face. The darkness fled, but Lyra's hands shook. She knew then the battle they thought they'd won had only changed form. The following dawn, Kyellen found Lyra standing on the citadel's balcony, their daughter in her arms and the wind tossing their hair like black and silver flame. "You heard it too," he said quietly. She nodded. "It's in her blood. The serpent's power didn't die, it moved." Kyellen reached for the child, tracing a trembling finger across her brow. "Then we'll teach her to master it," he said firmly. "To use it for light, not darkness."
Lyra turned to him, her eyes haunted yet fierce. And if she can't? Kaelen met his gaze without flinching. Then we'll burn the darkness before it ever touches her heart. The wind rose, carrying their vow into the mountains, across the sleeping forest, through every den and denizen of the pack. That night, as the moon turned pale once more, Ira slept between them, her tiny hands glowing faintly gold and silver. Outside, a single wolf howled, long and low, as if warning the stars themselves. The war isn't over. It has only changed its name.
16 years had passed. The kingdom of wolves had prospered under the twin flames, and Ira had grown into a girl of impossible grace and quiet fire. Yet that night, when the moon failed to rise, every creature in the forest knew something ancient had stirred again. The stars dimmed, the rivers turned still, and the wolves howled not in unity, but in fear. Ira stood at the citadel's edge, gazing toward the horizon. "It's begun," she whispered. Kaelen joined her, his once silver hair now streaked with gray, his eyes sharp as ever. "She's not a child anymore," he said quietly. "Whatever it is, she has to face it." Down below, Ira stood barefoot on the marble courtyard, her dark hair wild in the wind. The air shimmered around her, gold and silver threads twisting through her aura. "It's calling me," she said, her voice low but steady. "The serpent's song. It's in my blood." Ira's breath caught. Kaelen stepped forward, gripping Ira's shoulder. "Then we end it, together." But Ira shook her head slowly. "No. This time, it ends with me." Ira walked alone beneath the broken sky, guided by whispers that rose from the earth itself. The Valley of Echoes, the place where the serpent had first been born from moonlight and betrayal. Every step she took left faint fireprints on the ground, the light shifting between silver and crimson. She could feel it watching her, the old hunger, the ancient promise. "Daughter of the twin flames," it hissed from the shadows, "you carry what your mother stole. You were never meant for light." Ira closed her eyes, breathing deeply. "You're wrong. I was meant for both." The air cracked. A colossal shape unfurled before her, scales like molten glass, eyes as old as the first dawn. The serpent's voice was everywhere. "Then burn with me. Let the world remember what it means to fear the moon." Ira spread her hands, flaring from her palms. Behind her, unseen, two figures approached, Ira and Kaelen, their faces set in grim determination. The serpent reared, its shadow swallowing the stars. The final war had come. The ground split open as the serpent struck, its tail whipping through the valley, sending shards of stone and light into the air. Ira leapt aside, her body glowing with both her parents' power. Kaelen charged, blade drawn, his roar echoing across the cliffs. Ira raised her hands, summoning silver fire from the air, weaving a shield around her daughter. The serpent laughed, a sound that shook the mountains. "You think love can kill me? Love is what birthed me." Its fangs struck, grazing Ira's shoulder, and black fire spread across her skin. Kaelen lunged, slashing deep into its neck. The serpent screamed, not in pain, but in rage. "You cannot destroy what you are." Ira froze, and in that moment, she saw. The serpent's eyes mirrored her own. It wasn't just an enemy. It was her, the darkness that had been born inside her when she first opened her eyes. "I understand," she whispered. She turned to her parents. "You can't kill it. You'd kill me too." Kalen's grip tightened on his sword. "Then what do we do?" She looked at him, tears glinting. "You let me sing."
Ira stepped into the serpent's shadow, placing her hand on its chest. It recoiled at first, then trembled. "You were never meant to be a curse," she said softly. "You were meant to be the balance." The creature hissed weakly. "Balance is an illusion." "So is fear," she replied. She closed her eyes and a sound rose from her throat. A soft, haunting melody that made the air shimmer. The same lullaby Ira once sang to calm her as a baby. Her mother's song. The song of the lost and the found. The serpent writhed, its form flickering between shadow and light. The melody spread across the valley, silencing the wind, stealing the rivers, awakening the moon. Ira joined her voice to her daughters, and Kaelin followed, his growl deep and steady beneath their harmonies. The serpent's body cracked, light spilling out from every wound. "I am tired," it whispered. "Then rest," Ira said gently. "Rest inside me." The last of its essence flowed into her, and for a moment her body glowed with pure white light, brighter than the sun, softer than forgiveness. Then, silence. When the moon finally rose again, the valley was still, the serpent was gone. In its place stood Ira, taller now, her eyes calm, her body surrounded by faint silver flame. Ira and Kaelin rushed to her, tears streaming down their faces. "You did it," Ira whispered, cupping her daughter's cheek. "You saved us all." Ira smiled faintly. "No, Mother. We saved each other." She turned to the horizon, where dawn began to paint the sky in gold. "The darkness will always exist, but now it knows how to sing." She raised her hand, and the light that once was the serpent dispersed into the wind, shimmering across the forest, the mountains, the wolves who howled below. It became part of the world again, not as a curse, but as memory. Kaelin wrapped his arm around Ira, his voice hoarse. "She's more than our daughter," he said. "She's the end of the prophecy." Ira nodded, smiling through tears. "And the beginning of something greater." As the first light touched their faces, Ira looked up at the moon and whispered, "I am both the lost and the found."
Thank you for staying till the end. Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.